Delaney stood in the corner of the conference room, adjusting the lights just enough so the screen wouldn't glare. She had been there since dawn, testing slides, checking cables, smoothing out the last-minute panic no one else would bother with. The room buzzed with anticipation. Today was the big reveal. Months of strategy, user flow, training simulations, all built by her hands, pixel by pixel, line by line. But when the doors opened and the executives from Aegis Inc. walked in, something felt off. Maxon Briggs, her manager, strode confidently to the front, not with the team, but alone. His name was printed on every slide. His voice led the opening greeting. His hands held the laser pointer. And Delaney's name? It wasn't anywhere. No mention, no credit, no trace. Just like that, she was erased. But the worst part? She was still in the room, watching it happen, watching a man present her system, her data, her work, as if it were always his. No hesitation, no shame. And as the clients nodded in approval, smiling at the brilliance he didn't create, Delaney felt something crack inside her. How do you react when the spotlight turns away from you and shines right on the thief? But before we get into it, where are you tuning in from today? And tell me this, have you ever felt like someone took your work and wore it like their own? Drop a comment if this hits close to home. You never know, your story might be the one that helps someone else feel seen. Delaney Rowe never chased the spotlight. She wasn't the type to speak the loudest in meetings or throw her name around in Slack threads. What she did chase relentlessly was clarity. Clarity in systems, in outcomes, in the experience users would have when they clicked Start Training. That's where she lived, in the backend dashboards, in the data flows, in the logic trees that held an entire company's learning structure together without anyone ever seeing her name. For 3 years at Edison, Delaney had quietly become the engine behind their most complex training platforms. Every client success case study they boasted about, that was her framework. Every smooth onboarding process their partners praised, her simulations. She built modular paths that adapted in real time to a trainee's pace. She coded feedback systems that flagged knowledge gaps before they became compliance risks. Her work saved companies millions in errors, delays, and churn, but Maxon Briggs, her manager, acted like she was just support. He'd pop into her office with lines like, "I told the board the rollout was seamless. Great job helping make that happen," then walk off before she could answer. It wasn't that she was invisible. It was worse. She had been made background, expected, convenient, like office Wi-Fi, only noticed when something went wrong. Still, she stayed because her work was good, because her rent was due, because every time she considered quitting, a voice inside whispered, "Just finish this phase. One more clean delivery. One more project, and maybe they'll finally see you." And now she was knee-deep in the Aegis build, a multi-million-dollar contract that could change everything. She was running point on everything from the UX layer to the risk assessment module. Maxon hadn't touched a line of logic, but his name was already on the client calendar. That night, Delaney stayed late at the office, the glow of her screen reflecting in her glasses as the floor fell silent around her. The system was nearly done. Just one more test case to run, just one more safeguard to write. But as the cursor blinked on the final approval screen, she paused. A strange feeling had crept in, like someone else was already planning to take the credit, and this time she wasn't sure she'd let it slide. The ask came in casually, too casually. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Delaney had just finished debugging a flow error that had silently broken the scoring logic across all regional assessments. She hadn't eaten lunch yet. Her eyes were dry, her focus was thin. That's when Maxon showed up at her desk with his usual confident lean and a cup of coffee that wasn't for her. "Quick thing," he said, not looking up from his phone. "We're going to comp the first phase of Aegis as a gesture. You know, relationship building. Just need you to adjust the invoice language." Delaney blinked. Wait, comp? The phase? That's 60% of the build. Maxon waved it off like it was bad weather. "It's goodwill, Dee." We've got pushback on pricing, and I'd rather lock them in now than lose the whole account. You get it. She didn't get it. Or maybe she did, and that's what made her stomach twist. This wasn't the first time Maxon had used words like gesture or partnership to cover up strategic favors that only ever benefited him. He'd make a backdoor deal, spin it like generosity, and then rely on her to fill in the execution without asking too many questions. Delaney looked down at her screen. The data dashboards, the learning paths, the risk mitigation modules, this wasn't a favor. This was work. Months of it. Was I consulted on this? She asked quietly. He shrugged. No, but come on, you're a team player, right? And let's be honest, this client gives you visibility. Visibility. A word that sounded like opportunity, but felt more like a leash. Delaney didn't argue, not out loud, but something inside her sank a little deeper. The kind of sinking that didn't come from surprise, but from recognition. She'd been here before, where your effort is infinite, but your name stays off the record. Where someone else gets the handshake and you get the email at 6 p.m. asking for changes by morning. That night, as she walked to her car under the flat glow of the parking garage lights, her phone buzzed. A meeting had been added to her calendar. Aegis Workshop, Final Prep Review. Organizer, Maxon Briggs. Presenter, Maxon Briggs. Delaney's name wasn't on it, and this time she didn't just feel tired, she felt awake. The morning of the Aegis Workshop was unusually quiet, not peaceful, just still, like the air before a thunderstorm, like something was waiting to snap. Delaney arrived 2 hours early. She always did. She liked to be the first in the room to run her checks without interruption. The screen resolution, the backup files, the USB drives labeled and stacked like little soldiers. Every chair aligned perfectly. Every printout crisp. She moved like clockwork, calm, focused, composed on the outside. But inside, something was shifting. Not anger, not yet, just a kind of dense silence building up behind her ribs. When she stepped into the conference room, she wasn't surprised to see it already set up. What did surprise her was the branding. The welcome slide was live on the projector. Aegis Inc. Training Rollout Session, presented by Maxon Briggs, Chief Strategy Lead. Chief Strategy Lead? That wasn't his title. It wasn't anyone's title. Her chest tightened. She checked the printed packets on each seat. His name again. No mention of her, no team listed, just Maxon. Delaney didn't say a word. Instead, she walked over to the catering table, adjusted a napkin, checked that the coffee was hot, then stepped out into the hallway for air she couldn't seem to find inside. She leaned against the cool metal wall, eyes fixed on the carpet, breathing slow. Her mind wasn't racing. It was eerily still. She wasn't planning anything, not yet, just feeling the full weight of what this was. Not a mistake, not a mix-up. This was a decision. A message. You build it, we'll wear it. You run it, we'll name it. And you stand to the side and smile. Her phone buzzed with a Slack message from Maxon. Quick favor, can you get the client Wi-Fi login ready? I forgot to print it. No greeting, no thank you. Delaney stared at the screen for a few seconds, then locked her phone without replying. She straightened her blazer, glanced once at her reflection in the elevator glass, and walked slowly back toward the conference room. Each step echoed louder than the last, and somewhere, deep inside, the silence began to crack. When Delaney stepped back into the conference room, the scene had changed. The long table was nearly full now, executives from Aegis Inc. settling in with their neatly labeled packets and complimentary coffee cups. Some chatted quietly, flipping through slides. Others scanned their phones, barely glancing up. But all eyes shifted as Maxon walked to the front with a polished smile, straightening his tie as if he were about to unveil a personal masterpiece. Delaney stood near the back unnoticed. She wasn't introduced, she wasn't acknowledged, she was just there, a fixture in the room she had built from the ground up. Maxon cleared his throat. Good morning, everyone. Really excited to take you through our customized training structure, something we've worked hard on for months now. We, that word again. Delaney looked at the screen. The first slide read, Presented by Maxon Briggs, with no asterisk, no footnote, no team credits. And something inside her, something that had been cracking for weeks, finally broke. She walked to the front, calm, steady, not rushed. Her heels made a subtle, deliberate rhythm across the floor. Maxon turned startled. Oh, Dee, did you need? But she was already holding the remote. The projector beeped. The slide changed. Her name lit up across the screen, Delaney Rowe, lead architect, Edison Learning Framework, temporarily hidden, not erased. Gasps were soft but audible. A few heads turned sharply. One executive raised an eyebrow. Delaney turned to face the room, voice even. Apologies for the confusion. I won't be leading today's session after all. She let that sentence land, watched the ripple it caused. I've just been informed this session is being delivered at no cost. That decision was made without my input or consent, so respectfully, I'll be stepping away. Silence, the kind that doesn't hum, it presses. Maxon's mouth hung slightly open, caught between disbelief and panic. Aegis's team looked at one another, unsure if this was part of the presentation or something else entirely. Delaney didn't explain. She didn't raise her voice. She simply placed the remote down, gave a polite nod, and walked out of the room. Past the ferns, past the front desk, into the light of a late morning sun that suddenly felt more real than it had in months. And just as the doors slid shut behind her, she heard a voice, low, calm, deliberate, call her name, Miss Rowe. She turned, and there he was. Delaney froze at the sound of her name. She turned slowly, blinking against the sudden shift from the artificial lighting of the boardroom to the natural sunlight pouring into the lobby. The man standing there looked familiar, though she had only seen him once in a briefing packet. Monroe Lasker, the executive director of operations at Aegis Holdings. Not just the client's client, the one at the top of the chain. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't angry either, just composed, intentional. I was hoping to speak with you, he said, stepping closer, if you're not in a hurry. Delaney hesitated. Everything in her told her to keep walking, to get in her car and disappear before the weight of what she'd just done caught up with her. But something in his voice, low, deliberate, curious, made her stop. She nodded once. They walked side by side out of the building, past rows of corporate landscaping and valet stands, to a small bench near the corner. No crowd, no audience. I've seen the training framework, Monroe said, folding his hands. The backend logic, the diagnostics, the adaptive pacing. That wasn't Maxon's work. Delaney didn't reply, just looked ahead, jaw tight. It was yours, he continued, as if stating a fact he'd already verified. I asked around. She glanced at him, unsure whether to be flattered or concerned. You walked away from a major client meeting, Monroe said. That's either a mistake or a signal. Delaney exhaled slowly. It was both. There was a pause. We're restructuring our vendor learning ecosystem, he said. It's a mess, frankly. We're considering direct engagements for key builds. No middlemen, no branding fluff, just results. She turned to him now fully. Are you offering me a job? He shook his head. Not quite. An opportunity. Quiet for now, but meaningful. You'd operate independently. Think of it as building something real, without the noise. Delaney's heart thudded once. Then again. She hadn't planned for this, but maybe someone else had. Monroe reached into his coat pocket and handed her a business card. The title printed below his name said it all. SVP, Aegis Holdings, Strategic Transformation Initiatives. On the back, in simple black font, Let's Talk. He stood up. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., 3rd floor, Corner Cafe downtown. Bring nothing except your actual ideas. And then he walked off. No pitch, no push, just a clear path left in his wake. Delaney stared at the card in her hand. For the first time in a long time, it felt like she was being invited, not used. And somewhere deep down, a different kind of silence began to form, one filled with potential. Delaney arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early, heart steady, but hands cold. It wasn't nerves, not exactly. It was readiness. The kind you feel when something important is about to begin, and you know deep down you won't be the same on the other side of it. Monroe was already seated by the window, flipping through a slim notebook. No laptop, no assistant, just him and a glass of black coffee. "Right on time," he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. She sat quietly. He didn't waste time. "We've started a silent audit," Monroe said, "of our training vendors, what they deliver versus what they promise. We've found discrepancies." He slid a folder across the table. Inside, names, logos, dates. And at the center, Edusin, her old employer. "This stays off the record," he continued. "For now, you'd be consulting under a neutral LLC. Independent analysis, access to backend systems. We want to see what's real and what's just a pitch deck." Delaney flipped through the documents. She saw reports she had once written, repurposed, renamed, stripped of attribution. Modules she had designed showing up across unrelated projects. Same typos, same logic structures, only now under someone else's brand. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just messy. It was dishonest, systemic. "Can you do this quietly?" Monroe asked. She nodded. "Yes, but not passively." He smiled slightly. "Didn't think so." 2 days later, Delaney was deep inside Aegis's vendor hub. Armed with a guest login and a burner laptop, she sifted through duplicate modules, conflicting assessments, outdated compliance records, all masked under flashy PDF covers and hollow metrics. Every pattern she flagged led back to the same place. The same architecture, the same name. She took notes, coded everything by risk level. Red for critical, yellow for friction, blue for misalignment. And when she reached a particular file labeled Edusin Proprietary Learning Framework, Global Edition, she paused because she remembered writing that version, word for word, but her name wasn't on it, not even in the metadata. She stared at the screen, then slowly opened a blank document. At the top, she typed Phase 1, Structural Forensics, then Objective Trace What They Stole, Build What They Never Could. She leaned back. The war had already started. They just didn't know she was in the room yet. Delaney had always believed in facts over flair. While others chased applause with flashy demos and buzzwords, she trusted numbers, timestamps, logic. Not because they were perfect, but because they didn't lie, especially when no one wanted them to speak. For the next 2 weeks, she moved like a ghost through the Aegis vendor system. Every day, she logged in from her makeshift home office, a quiet space cluttered with sticky notes and half-drunk cups of tea. Every night, she left with a little more truth than the day before. She reviewed modules from 3 of Aegis's top-tier vendors, cross-checked learning objectives, traced code fragments, compared assessment metrics with actual performance data. And again, one name kept surfacing, Edusin. Their content was everywhere, copied, reshaped, renamed, but the flaws were the same. Outdated scenarios, generic compliance slides, inconsistent scoring logic. Some modules hadn't been touched in 5 years, yet were still sold as customized solutions. Delaney didn't just find errors, she found patterns, and patterns told stories. She built a dashboard, clean, color-coded, unforgiving. Red tags for critical failures, compliance breaches, duplicated answers, modules marked as adaptive but never adjusting. Yellow for friction points, user drop-offs, misaligned formats, poor feedback integration. Green, there wasn't much green. Then she prepared a slide deck. Simple, clinical, no fluff. Each slide showed the impact, how delayed onboarding caused contract losses, how misunderstood safety training led to actual incidents, How custom builds were 90% recycled content sold at premium price points. She didn't add commentary. She didn't need to. The data spoke for itself. When Monroe saw the report, he didn't blank, just leaned back, eyes focused, jaw tight. "You're sure?" he asked quietly. Delaney nodded once. "I wrote half of this. I remember the mistakes. They didn't even bother to fix." He exhaled. "Not surprised, just ready. The executive committee meets Thursday. I want you there." Delaney hesitated. Presenting, leading. She closed her laptop slowly, heart heavy but steady. The room they were about to enter wasn't just another meeting. It was a reckoning, and this time, the slides had teeth. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Thick paper, no return address. Just her name, Delaney Rowe, typed in all caps and slipped under her apartment door like it had somewhere urgent to be. She stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Inside, a formal cease and desist. 3 pages of legalese, dripping with accusation. Alleged breach of confidentiality, improper use of proprietary frameworks, unlawful solicitation of client relationships. At the bottom, in uneven signature ink, was the name she expected, Maxon Briggs. Delaney didn't laugh. Not quite. But there was something almost absurd about it. The man who had erased her name from every document now claimed she had stolen work he never built. She read it again, this time slower. Not out of fear, but precision. Fear had left her weeks ago. What remained now was clarity. Still, her hands trembled as she scanned the final paragraph. It was meant to intimidate, to scare her into silence, but it felt more like a child throwing sand after losing a game. She took a photo of the letter and forwarded it to Monroe with a short message. "Thought you'd enjoy this. Thoughts?" His reply came in under 10 minutes. "Already flagged it. Legal's drafting a response. Sit tight." And just like that, the storm passed before it even touched her. But the silence that followed, it was louder than the threat. Maxon's team went quiet. No follow-ups, no public posts, no replies to her LinkedIn watchers, who were now trickling in with curious, cautious DMs. First, it was Nate from Product, then Clara from HR, then 2 old interns who used to sit near the printer and whisper their dreams of doing something real someday. Now they were asking where she had gone and whether she needed help. The tide was shifting. But Delaney wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because when power slips, people don't disappear quietly. They scramble. And somewhere in a half-empty office, Maxon was almost certainly doing just that, frantically dialing contacts, spinning his story, looking for a foothold. But the floor was crumbling, and she had just been handed the microphone. It didn't come with sirens, no big announcements, no dramatic headlines. Just a quiet update to an internal portal. Delaney was reviewing onboarding feedback from a pilot region when she clicked into the vendor list, something she had done a dozen times that week. Except this time, Edison's name was gone. Not pending review, not suspended, just missing, deleted like a typo. Her cursor hovered over the blank space where the name used to be. It felt strange, almost too simple. Months of build-up, tension, silence, and then this. A soft keystroke that carried the weight of collapse. She checked again, scrolling carefully. Nothing. No contact listed. No contract ID. No archive tag. Vendor 3247, Maxon's firm, no longer existed in Aegis's ecosystem. Delaney leaned back in her chair, a slow exhale escaping her lungs. Not relief, not triumph, just a shift, like a weight quietly lifting from her shoulders without warning. Across the office, she could hear the low hum of printers and the distant buzz of quiet conversations. The world didn't stop. No one cheered. But she knew something irreversible had just happened, and she wasn't the only one. Her inbox pinged a few minutes later. A former colleague from Edusin, one who used to avoid eye contact, had forwarded her a screenshot. A Slack message from Maxon's internal thread. Subject: Client has gone dark. Message: No replies from procurement. Last emails bounced. We might lost Aegis. Anyone have back channels? Delaney stared at it. There it was, the panic, the scramble, the unraveling. But there were no hands left to throw him a line. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened a new draft, a framework proposal for a full-scale vendor reevaluation system. Clean, scalable, transparent. At the top, she wrote, Halcyon Model Phase 2, and beneath that, for organizations ready to rebuild. Because while Maxon tried to hold on to what was already gone, Delaney had moved on to building what came next. It started with a single email. Subject line, Northbeam Consulting, registration confirmation. Delaney stared at the screen, her name officially tied to a new entity, one she owned, one no one could take credit for but her. It didn't feel loud. It didn't feel cinematic. It felt clean, quiet, right. From there, things moved fast. Monroe's team handled the paperwork, legal, budget lines, an NDA that wasn't about silence, it was about protection. Her first retainer arrived before the ink on her LLC approval had dried. She didn't print it, she didn't frame it, but she did sit with it for a minute, let the moment land. Her first assignment under the Northbeam name, rebuild Aegis's entire internal training model, not just patch what was broken, replace it, root and stem. Delaney approached the task like an architect walking through ruins, not to mourn, but to measure. She mapped out learning pathways by role, not rank. Tied assessments to actual outcomes, not completion rates. Wrote modules that reflected real-world risk, not corporate jargon. And for the first time, every slide, every checklist, every simulation bore the watermark Northbeam, clarity by design. Feedback started trickling in by the end of week 2. Finally, something that makes sense. This is the most useful onboarding I've seen in years. Can we roll this out to the satellite offices too? No one asked who made it. But when they did, the answer was always the same. Delaney Rowe. Her name wasn't at the bottom anymore. It was on the title slide, in the login portal, on the signature block of every executive summary. She wasn't background now. She was the system. And as she walked into the top floor conference room of Aegis Tower, badge in hand, tablet loaded with the latest rollout deck, someone held the elevator for her and said with a smile, Northbeam, right? You're the one fixing all of it. Delaney smiled back. She didn't correct him, because for once the credit was finally going where it belonged. But upstairs, a different kind of meeting was waiting, one she hadn't expected, and someone from her past was about to walk through that door. Delaney didn't expect to see him again, but there he was, Maxon Briggs, walking into the boardroom like he still belonged there, eyes scanning for familiarity, searching for someone who might toss him a lifeline. He didn't find one. No introductions were made, no handshake. Just a long table of executives, data screens glowing, and Delaney seated at the head, badge clipped, calm, unmoved. For a second, he hesitated, opened his mouth like he had something rehearsed, but the moment had passed. The room had moved on. Delaney didn't raise her voice, didn't glare. She simply nodded once and said, "We'll begin by reviewing vendor history. I believe you're next." There was no rage, no revenge speech, just facts. Just structure. The same structure he had once tried to bury her inside, now used to measure his collapse. By the end of the session, no one said his name. He left quietly. Not fired, just erased. And Delaney, she stayed, finished the presentation, shook hands, filed notes, and when she stepped out into the crisp air of late afternoon, she realized something. She wasn't powerful because someone had finally seen her. She was powerful because she never stopped seeing herself. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about building something that couldn't be taken, even if her name wasn't on it. Now it was. Not because they needed her, but because she earned it. If there's one thing she learned, it's this. When you finally stop asking for permission to exist, people start listening differently. And sometimes the clearest kind of justice is moving forward while they stay stuck in place. What about you? Have you ever realized your value too late or just in time? Tell me in the comments. Your story might be the one that helps someone else stop waiting.